me what is an exception?
Hello. Hello.
Yes, Samika, you're audible. Tell me.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Ma'am, so exception is a problem that occurs during the runtime, ma'am. And due to that, ma'am, execution might stop and program will not, ma'am, program will terminate also. Ma'am, that is it. Ma'am, there are two types of exception, that is checked and unchecked. In unchecked exception, ma'am, compiler is not aware of those exceptions, and ma'am, in checked, compiler will be like aware of those exceptions. That is it, ma'am.
Yes, Samiksha, correct, correct. Yes,
Okay.
exception is a problem. Yes, Samiksha, very good. Okay, so exception means a problem that happens during runtime. Okay, once exception occurs, the program will stop there only. It will stop abruptly. Okay, and we have two type of exceptions. That is checked exception and unchecked exception. Unchecked exception is an exception where compiler is unaware that there is an exception. Checked exception, I mean, unchecked exception is an exception where compiler is unaware that there is an exception, and checked exception is an exception where compiler is aware. When compiler is unaware, it is a unchecked exception. When compiler is aware, it is a checked exception. Okay, so this is the difference between checked and unchecked exceptions. So when a unchecked exception happens directly in the console, you get a exception and you have to handle it. Okay, but in a checked exception, while you're writing the exception name only, it will throw you error. It will throw you error that it will force the programmer to handle or declare. Okay, it will force the programmer to handle or declare. Okay, now can anyone tell me how to handle an exception? Anyone? How to handle an exception? Yes, we have to handle an exception using try and catch block. Yes. Yes, Ankit?
Yes, ma'am. We can handle the exception by using try and block method.
Yes, try
So,
block and catch block. That is try and catch block.
yes, basically try block is responsible for the exception should be written inside the block actually, and the try block through the to the catch block. So with the help of catch block, we can achieve the uh, result for the exception actually, which is that occurs.
Yes, correct, correct. Very good. Okay. So we have to handle an exception. Okay. We have to handle an exception using try and catch block. So the the statement, okay, the statement which is responsible for the exception, we have to write inside a try. Okay. The statement which is responsible for exception, we have to write in a try. And in a catch block, you have to write the exception. Okay, in the try block we have to write the statement which are responsible for exception. And here in the try block whatever the statement will write, it might get an exception, it might not get an exception. The statement which are present in try block might get an exception and might not get an exception. It depends on the user when user is giving input. Okay, suppose if there is an exception present in the try block, okay, here whatever the statement we have presented in the try block, if there is an exception, now what happens is this statement which is responsible for exception, it will create one object, one throwable type object it will create. Suppose if this is of arithmetic type, this will create one arithmetic type object address with some address. Okay, arithmetic type object it will create. Then after that, here since the exception is of arithmetic type, here also we have to mention the arithmetic type exception with one variable. Okay, now this statement is throwing an exception. Okay, so it will create one throwable type object of arithmetic type. Now then it will throw the exception to the catch block. it will throw that object to the catch block, exception object. So what happens? We shall tell that exception is handled only when the catch block catches that exception. Okay, we shall tell that exception is handled only that catch block is, that where reference variable is catching this reference or the address. Okay, then only we shall tell the exception is handled. Then only we can tell the exception is handled. Here, whenever this address is caught by the catch block, here whatever the statements are there in the catch block will execute. Okay, we shall tell exception is handled only when the catch block catches the exception. Okay, whatever the exception object is created, no, if the catch block catches the exception, only we can tell that the exception is handled. Exception is handled. If catch block is not catching the exception, then we shall tell exception is unhandled. Exception is unhandled. Okay, so this is what we have seen in yesterday's class. Now what we shall see is, we shall see exception with multiple catch blocks. Multiple catch blocks. Now we shall see exception with the multiple catch blocks. Okay, now here, so when you go for exception with multiple catch blocks, okay, in a try block, okay, in a try block you will have multiple statements. In a try block you'll have multiple statements, and in the catch block, here we cannot write only one exception. Okay, we cannot write only one exception. Suppose there are so many statements which are responsible for exception. There are so many statements which are responsible for exception. Okay, now what all type of statements we have? Okay, what all type of statements we have? All the type of exception catch blocks we have to create. All the type of catch blocks we have to create. But why? All the type of catch blocks we have to create. But why? See guys, as a programmer, we have to be prepared for everything. We don't know what statement might get the exception. Okay, we might guess, and we might not know sometimes what input user gives, and we might not know what exception will occur. So surprisingly any exception might occur. So whatever type of statements we have here, okay, whatever type of statements we have here, that type of catch blocks we have to create. That type of catch blocks we have to create to catch all kinds of exception. Okay, so this is about a multiple catch blocks. Try with multiple catch blocks. This is called as try with multiple catch blocks. Try with multiple catch blocks. Okay, so try with multiple catch blocks means a try will have enormous amount of statements. Okay, so many statements will be there which are responsible for exception, and here all these statements will execute from top to bottom order. Now in a catch block also, whatever the statement has an exception, okay, the catch block should catch the exception. If catch block is not catching the exception, then we shall tell exception is unhandled. Exception is unhandled. Okay, now let us see one small example. Throwable type object means throwable is a parent for all exception. See, throwable means it's a class name. Under throwable only you get a exception as well as error. Exception as well as error. So whatever type of object you create in an exception, whatever type of exception you get, it is of type throwable. It is of type throwable. Obviously, see, you are getting an exception. Okay, all the inbuilt methods, all the features of throwable is present in the child class. Okay, so whenever we have a exception in a statement, it will create an object of throwable type. Okay, one arithmetic, suppose if it is arithmetic exception, one arithmetic exception of a throwable object will be created. Okay, and it will be thrown to the reference of the catch block. It will be thrown to the reference of catch block. Okay, so this is how your try with multiple catch works. Try with multiple catch works. Now let us see it practically how it works. Look like chaining concept. No, it's not chaining. I will tell you. Okay, so let us go to Eclipse. Okay, let it open. We shall wait. Okay, so we shall go to your project. Okay, so we shall go to your project. Project T23. And here, okay, where are we? In exception handling. Okay, so now we shall create one class naming try with multiple catch blocks. Try with multiple catch blocks. Okay, now go for main method. Now here, okay, so we have a main method here. Now what we shall do is we can all these statements which are responsible for exception we can throw inside a try block. Okay, now let us take few statements. Okay, let us take arithmetic type, null pointer exception type, class cast type, string index autobound exception type. So all type we shall take. Okay, suppose int result. Okay, now result is equal to 5 by 0. 5 by 0. We might expect, okay, we will expect the exception, arithmetic exception in the line number 8. Now, next, string yes is equal to null, and we expect yes dot to lowercase method. Okay, so null equal to, okay, we shall take the same examples 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, now so now if we try to access index till 0, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, till 4 it is fine. But if you access till 5, okay, if you access till 5, you will get a array index out of bounds exception. You will get array index out of bounds exception. Okay, now here, okay, so what we shall do is okay, so here try with multiple catch blocks. So yeah, okay, minimum 3 we shall take, 3 exceptions we shall take. So we have a arithmetic exception, we have a null pointer exception, we have a array index out of bounds exception. We shall take one more, a string index out of bounds exception. String str is equal to, we shall take the name Kumar or Kumari we shall take. Now here we shall try to access, okay, we shall try to access the index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are only index till 5, but we'll try to access till index 6. Okay, we'll try to access till index 6. So when you're trying to access till index 6, you will get a string index out of bounds exception. You will get a string index out of bounds exception. So now what we have to do is, see guys, we don't know what kind of exception we will get. As a developer, we have to be prepared for everything. Okay, we don't know what exception here we are taking directly. Okay, here we are taking directly, but when we are taking input from user, we don't know what thing user will give. So for everything we have to be prepared. Okay, so what exception we might get here? First of all, what is the statement which is responsible for exception? Yes, here in these two lines, in line number 7 and 8. Okay, line number 8 is responsible for exception. Line number 8 is responsible for exception. So we shall throw that inside a try block. Okay, now in the line number 9 and 10, okay, here the statement which is responsible for exception, okay, the statement which is responsible for exception is line number 10. Okay, line number 10. Now here, next here in line number 10 and 12, okay, the statement which is responsible for exception is line number 12. Okay, line number 12. Okay, let us copy it. Okay, in here string s is equal to Kumari. Okay, now here we shall go for line number 14 because it will give you string index out of bounds exception. Okay, now here are the statements which is there. Okay, here these statements are the data. Okay, the statements are the data, and here in the try block we have the statements which are responsible for exception. Okay, here we will get the exception. These are the statements which are purely responsible for exception. In the first statement we shall get the arithmetic exception. In the second statement we shall get a null pointer exception. In the third statement we might get a array index out of bounds exception. In the fourth statement we shall get a string index out of bounds exception. So here now what we have to do here is, for handling all these kinds of exception, we have to create multiple catch blocks. So what we have to do, see, we have to for this statement we have to create arithmetic exception, catch block of arithmetic exception type. Okay, variable e. Now here we have to tell the reason. Okay, the reason is don't divide by 0. Don't divide by 0. Okay, don't divide by 0. Next, here in the second statement, here line number 15, we might get a null pointer exception. So we have to write that also, null pointer exception. Okay, now we have to tell the reason. Okay, we can't use null for the operation. Okay, we shall tell don't. You can give your own reason. Okay, any kind of exception you might take and you can give your own reason. Okay, so we shall tell don't use null for the operations. Don't use null for the operations. Okay, next after this. Okay, so here in the line number 3 we shall get, okay, we might get a array index out of bounds exception. So for that also we have to create a catch block. We'll create a catch block of array index out of bounds exception, and here we'll have a reference variable e. We will tell access the array elements within the limit. We shall tell the reason. Access the array elements within the limit or within the boundary, you can tell. Okay, and in the last statement we shall get a string index out of bounds exception. So for handling that also we have to go for string index out of bounds exception, and variable e. Now we shall tell the same reason here. Access the string okay, access the string within the limit. Please give the right index. Sanket, here our motto is to give the wrong index only. We have to get the exception. Now if you give the right index, that character will be printed. If you are giving wrong index, that exception will be printed. Then we'll come to know how to handle that exception. For that only we are working here. If I give right index here, the data will be printed. That's it. That is what I told. No, see here you will get arithmetic exception. I said for catch block. What you told? Right index number. Catch block, right index number. Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay, see, we can't give the right index number. We can't tell in a standard format. We can't give the right index number. User might give something else. User might give any character.